Do you know the value that you bring to your marriage? Do you understand what it is that you do in your marriage that is really resonating with your wife? If not, then stay tuned, because I think this is something many men fail to realize. You are listening to the Husband Coach's Corner, the podcast designed to teach husbands how to love their wife each and every day and become better men in the process. I'm your host, Chris Scott, and welcome back to another episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Husband Coach's Corner. Today, we are talking all about the value that you bring in your marriage. I think this is extremely crucial for men to understand, because when you know what value you bring, you know how to bring the things that resonate to your wife. Now, this is one of the things that I had to learn fairly early on in my marriage, which was, what is it that I do for my wife that she extremely appreciates or values? And then, of course, I wanted to make sure that my wife knew the things that she does that I value. And those became the building blocks to prioritization in our marriage, right? Because if my wife is affirming certain things, then I should probably do those things on a more consistent basis. This is just how you win in marriage. So that's why I wanted to take some time to really unpack the importance of knowing your value. So, I don't really have any notes because I'm just speaking from my heart today. This is one of those things that I truly believe in. When you know your value of something, then you're going to be able to perform so well. And I don't mean performing in the regards of like acting or make believe or anything like that. What I mean is you're going to be able to show up and do the things that resonate with your wife. So how do you know or figure out what your value is in your marriage? Well, it all starts with asking your wife what it is that you do that brings her joy, that brings her excitement. All right. Now, she may list off a whole lot of things like you're funny, you're smart, you're resourceful, you're intelligent, right? She can say a lot of things, and you might be like, all right, well, how do I find the value in those things? Well, in my experience and what I've seen over the years in other people's marriages is you find the value in the thing that your wife appreciates the most about you, that comes the most natural to you. So, for instance, in our marriage, I take care of the finances. Now, my wife appreciates that because she didn't have an upbringing where financial boundaries were set. So she had a different take on how to manage finances. Whereas over the years, I've learned more about money and how to manage it and organizing it. So I naturally do those things, and that brings her a sense of comfort, knowing that we always have some form of financial stability in our marriage. Now, notice that I'm not saying like I made us wealthy or anything like that. It's just between the two of us, someone has to manage the bank accounts, make sure that the bills get paid and stuff like that, right? So I manage that calendar. And that is a value that I bring to our marriage because my wife just doesn't feel comfortable with it. Now, bonus tip on regards of finances and stuff like that. I'm not hiding the financial status of our bank account from my wife. She has all of the logins to look and see what we have. And I'm not neglecting her or telling her, no, you can't buy stuff. What I'm doing is making sure that based off of the budget that we've set for ourselves and the boundaries that we set for ourselves, that she isn't going beyond those. And when she starts to get to that point, then I say, hey, here's what I noticed. Now, that's a value that I bring that I know that she appreciates because she's told me many a times, but also because it's something that she's not the most comfortable with doing. Now, another value that many men could potentially be bringing into the home is security. And knowing that you bring a value of security, right? Or that your wife values the security that you bring, that goes a long ways. That goes further than you will even imagine, just because security, unlike finances, which finances can bring a form of security, right? But when we talk about physical security and safety, that brings comfort. And when your wife is comfortable knowing that you have the fort locked down, then you're going to definitely start building that relationship in a much more passionate and intimate way. So security is huge. Now, if your wife doesn't tell you that she feels secure when you're at the house, if it's something that maybe you just never asked and it was just like an assumption that, yeah, she always feels secure, then maybe you should go ask and see if you're bringing that value. All right. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you have to bring that. I think that it is a very beneficial thing for the husband to bring security. But if you guys got something working for you that is good for your marriage, then continue down those lines. Now, the next type of value, or the next important piece, I guess we could say, in reference to value, is the type of influence you have over things in your home. See, you can't have influence over something if you are not valued in that area. All right. Case in point, I can't have influence over my children if my wife doesn't value me as a father to my children. Now, this may hit home harder for others or harder for some than others, but the truth is, if you are not an engaged father, you're probably not bringing value in this area. And when you try to do certain things for or with your kids, you may get undermined, and that could just be very frustrating for you. If the only thing that you're doing with your kids is discipline, then you probably are not valued very much as a father figure in the household, because it goes further than just disciplining kids to be valued as a father. Now, I'm not picking on anyone or your parenting skills, right? I'm just being real with you that if you are trying to have influence of some sort with your children and your wife undermines you, you probably aren't valued as a father. And that's probably a place for you to go and evaluate for yourself. Now, if you know for a fact that you are engaged with your kids, you're present with the kids, and you are just a stand-up dad, and you still continue to feel like maybe you don't have the influence and your wife isn't valuing you, then there's probably a misconception or a negative perception of your fatherhood with your children in front of your wife. So that's a conversation that you got to have, because you definitely want to bring value to your marriage. If you have kids, obviously this is only applicable for those of you who have kids. You want to be value added as a parent. All right. You don't want to be the dude who's known as the guy who just lives here but doesn't do anything for the kids. That's no good. All right. That's no good. Now, the other areas that you want to have influence in your marriage is deciding what it is that you guys are doing for your hobbies, your hangout times, whatever it is. So are you valued in your decision-making ability, essentially, is what I'm getting at, right? If you are always choosing things to do that are like 100% outside of your wife's comfort zone, you're probably going to lose the value. And I keep saying that word because I really do want that to sink in. Your wife is not going to value your decision-making ability when it comes to those things. And then you won't have influence over the dates, and you start to get into this mundane routine of dinner and a movie. Now, not saying that anything's wrong with dinner and a movie. I think that we can be much more creative with the dates that we take our wives on, and they don't have to be the cliche dinner and a movie. But again, you can only really get her to go along with that if she values your decision-making ability, and you know that you're winning in this area because she goes on the dates with you. And hopefully you guys are having a good time. Now, if you're not having a good time consistently, because everyone has bad dates, right? I've taken my wife on some bad dates before. That doesn't mean that I am not providing value or being consistent in loving her in that regard. But, you know, sometimes you choose something and it just doesn't work out. All right. So we talked about the types of value. We talked about the importance of it, which is the influence. So now let's talk about not having value. If you don't have any form of value in the relationship, you probably know where you are, because this isn't something that magically happens one day where you are or are not providing value, right? This is a over time in either direction. Either over time you built value, or over time you destroyed it and you tarnished it. Now, if you are on the negative side of the scale in which it comes to value, then you probably need to try out a few things. The first one is figure out what you are good at doing in your relationship. All right. You got to figure that out, because if you don't know, how is your wife supposed to know? All right. But once you figure that thing out, then you present it to your wife and you say, hey, honey, you know what? I'm really good at cooking. Let me cook some food. All right. So then you go and you start cooking food. And over time, you're going to start to build a rapport, right? And then you're going to have more influence over the things that you guys get to eat, especially if you're like trying to work out and lose weight. Maybe your wife just doesn't have confidence in your ability to cook, and because you want to cook some more healthy foods, or foods that aren't heavy with grease and stuff like that. All right. That's a real thing. All right. There are a lot of men who struggle with the food aspect of providing value. So that's one way of approaching it, right? Figure out what value you bring, and then go and tell your wife, like, hey, let me try this thing out. The other way is asking your wife what she values the most about you, similar to what I've already talked about, right? Our wives give us the report card. If my wife comes and tells me, like, hey, honey, I value you doing yard work. I think that just brings a lot of joy to me, right? But I don't like doing yard work. In fact, I hate it. And, that's one of those things that it will sit on the honey-do list for a very long time. And when I want some brownie points, I know I got that in my back pocket, right? The point is that I'm really trying to make here is, once your wife tells you, you have to do something about it, regardless of if it's something that you find naturally good, especially if you don't know what you are doing to bring value. All right. Now, once you know what you're doing to bring value, then just keep doing that. Build upon it, right? It's like one of those things that when you do it and you continue to do it well, you start to build your influence. And when you have influence, the sky is the limit to where you can go in your relationship and what you guys are going to be able to accomplish together as a couple. Now, if you find yourself in a circumstance or situation where neither one of those options work, then you're probably not going to need to figure out value for your relationship. What you're going to need to figure out is what is going on with your relationship. Now, there are a lot of things that could be causing issues, and I'll be honest and tell you that I could sit here and rattle off a ton of them, from communication, lack of leadership, financial instability, sexual relation issues. There's a ton of stuff, right? Now, if you're really like, hey, I have no idea what's going on, I don't know what value I bring, and you really need someone to walk you through that, then sign up for a free consult so I can hear what you got to say, and hopefully help you through that and develop a plan that will get you moving in the right direction. All right. So if you are interested, check the description box of whatever platform you are listening or watching this podcast on and sign up for a free consult today. All right. You got nothing to lose. You will gain so much from the consult. And the only thing I ask is if you make the appointment that you show up. All right. And then we'll go from there. So hopefully this podcast resonated. You guys, I want you to go out there, find all right, it's important. I want you to go out there and find your value that you bring to your wife and to your relationship, and to your family even, right? This goes beyond just the marriage itself, but, I want to stay focused on building the marriage. So know what your value is, and consistently show up and deliver that value added thing, whatever it is. All right. So until next time, I want you guys to find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.